familiar with, especially when it comes to polls. I'm joined in the studio by Mussa Dankwah. He's the Executive Director and Head of Global Research, Global Infoanalytics. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us here this morning.
It's my pleasure.
And I was saying that some people say they are not feeling the elections fever. But then, are you feeling the fever?
I don't know what they want to feel.
So are you feeling it?
There's nothing to feel.
Okay.
Probably it's because we are in hard times. Yes.
But you know, the polls like yours adds to the whole election
activities.
The election fever.
Maybe we still have some few months to go. Once people have filed their nominations and they are cleared to contest, not everybody that has filed will be cleared to contest. So maybe once the field is clear, maybe the full-blown campaign will start. With the exception of the top candidates who know that come what may, they will be on the ticket. The rest is anybody's guess.
Oh, absolutely. Now, from time to time, Global Infoanalytics, gauges the mood on the ground with regard to where people's heads are at going into the polls. There's a latest one. At the moment, we are less than 90 days to the polls. Let's start with the basics. I think a lot of the headlines are out there where the poll says that at the moment, John Mahama is leading by some 53%. If there's to be an election, is likely to win by that margin, if I can simplify it in that manner. Let's take it from there. When was this poll done, first of all?
This poll was conducted between 25th August and I think 7th September. Let me be precise. I think we might be correct. Between that period, yes.
Okay, and in what form did it take?
This time we conducted a telephone polls.
So you called people?
Yes.
Individually?
Yes.
Wow.
We have a database that comprised nearly 7,000 voters who are MPP, NDC, floating voters, other party supporters, and those who will not tell you the party they support.
Okay.
What we did was that whenever we go to the field to do the field work, we ask them permission to collect their phone numbers.
Okay.
So that if we want to call them back for further polls, we can do so. And they willingly give us their numbers.
And why the choice of phone polling this time around? Is this the first time you're doing that? Or you've been doing it from time to time?
We've been doing telephone polling, especially on the delegate elections.
Delegates,
If you look at the MPP delegate election, it was by telephone.
Okay.
You cannot do delegate election polls by in person.
Okay.
Even though you know them, but how do you find out where they are? So we've been doing that for several years.
Okay, those are for the delegates. But then for the general election?
For the general one, we've been doing this quietly without telling anybody since March.
Oh, wow.
And the reason we do this is to serve as a back check on the field survey we do.
Okay.
When they give you the numbers in that month, we call them again to take them through the same polls and see whether their views will be shifting.
Tally. Okay. You want to see whether they will correspond?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a way of checking on our field officers who are in the field.
Okay.
To see that the views of people they've spoken to in the field is still represented when you call them over the phone.
Okay.
And this is what we do in even market research. When we are collecting data for companies, we tend to collect numbers and verify that the guys who went to do the field work actually went there to do the job. So it's a way of confirming the numbers.
Okay. So you say you've been doing this quietly since March. Beyond checking to be sure that your field officers have brought you the accurate information. There are people that when you meet them face to face, perhaps they could be shy and they would give you a different response. And then when you call, so how does that fall on your enumerator, for example?
And this is the very reason why we do the check-in.
Okay.
Their responses to the questions broadly will be in line.
Okay.
But what might change is maybe the party affiliation.
Okay.
When he saw you in the field, he was shy to say he's an MPP or NDC, or he's scared to say MPP or NDC. I won't disclose.
Yeah.
So in the field, we have higher proportion of I will not disclose my party to you.
But then
over the phone, it half.
On the field, you have a higher proportion.
Yes. on a telephone is reduced by half.
Wow. Because they are not seeing you.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
That's very interesting. Well, but then again, so comparing that to the in-person polls, would you say that a lot more people are more expressive over the phone compared to the in-person?
100%. You know, it's a psychology thing.
Yes.
You know, if you understand psychology, the same way it works. Once I see your face, I tend to, I'm a fair no. All those certain things come in, or maybe this guy looks like sent by MPP or sent by NDC.
Yeah.
So let me tell him a bit. So over the phone, when you call them, they're able to express a lot of things to you than they would have otherwise done in the field. We have seen that very, very openly.
Okay. So are you pro phone polling
Absolutely.
more compared
in
to
fact,
the in-person?
In fact, if we have the data in abundance, I'll not waste my time to go to the field.
Okay.
It's because we are constrained by that capacity, then we have to resort to in-field. If you go to places like the US and Europe, nobody does field polls.
Wow.
It's all done by telephone.
Okay. All right. Now let's get into the details of the report. The bit about the 53%, let's look at the figures in that area in relation to who they are likely to vote for. And these polls were done in all the 16 regions?
Yes.
All the 16 regions?
All 16 regions.
All right.
And we had about 32% of the respondents self-identified as MPP.
Okay.
30% self-identify as NDC. 28% self-identify as floating voters.
Okay.
So you can see that the party affiliation largely reflects what we know from the data.
From the data.
Yes.
And yes, so with that said, now let's look at the figures. If they are to vote, who are they voting for?
Right. It's quite simple. We asked them that if the elections were held today, who would they vote for?
Okay.
Now we have various models we use to calculate the voting intention.
Okay.
There is one we call all voters model. It means everybody we speak to, we must account for his response.
Okay.
So here you see John Mahama, you see Baumia, you see Alan, Bediaku, and all the other candidates. Plus those who say, I am undecided, and those who say they will not vote. On that basis, if you use that all model, Mahama is on 50%.
50. Okay.
Yes. Baumia on 29.6%. Alan on 1%. Bediaku 2.2%.
Bediaku is doing better than Alan?
That's what the telephone polls has found out.
Wow.
0.5% for all the other candidates put together. And then 10.5% undecided. And 6.3% said they will not vote.
And this is for the all
voters. We are counting
voters.
for every response.
Every response
Yes.
given. Okay.
Now, the next step is, okay, if we remove those who said they will not vote, and look at those who say they will vote, vis-a-vis those who say they are undecided, how does the numbers look like in that situation? When you do that, then you realize that John Mahama will go to 53.3%.
Okay.
I mean, we have removed those who said they will not vote from it. You don't expect them to turn out on election day to vote. But it doesn't mean that all of them will still not vote.
Yes.
Some may decide to change, like
Yeah,
changes and so on and so
absolutely.
forth. But it will not have material effect unless there's a dramatic shift in the enthusiasm on one party side, which has never been envisaged. And then Baumia on 31.6%. Alan now goes 1.1. Bediaku goes to 2.3. The others still remain at 0.5. And then those who say they are undecided is now 11.2%. So from the telephone poll, we have a huge number of people who are now undecided on the telephone or in the telephone poll.
On the telephone, with regard to that one.
Yes.
And you know, when you said Alan 1% and Bediaku 2-point-something%, I was surprised. Were you surprised by that?
No,
Why?
because of recent development in the data we have seen.
Okay.
We have seen dramatic shift in the race in the last 4 weeks.
What triggered that? What could have caused that?
I think, one, I'll be very straight. The running mate for MPP is not winning floating voters.
Okay.
And also,
But if that's the case, I mean, shouldn't it have gone automatically to Alan, for example?
I would explain. I'm coming.
Okay.
And then you have the press engagement by Vice President himself.
Okay.
A couple of weeks back, didn't help his cause. Now, there are people who likes Alan.
Okay.
They like Alan, but they are not sure if they vote for him is going to win. And that has been a drag on people or on Alan numbers. We also believe that voters don't want to have a Christmas that is packed with election activities.
They don't want a second round.
No. So people who would have otherwise went for Alan to make the whole thing exciting, some of them are shifting towards John Mahama.
So John Mahama
is benefiting from that, yes, that situation, yes. And this has been what we have seen in the last 4 weeks.
Okay.
Indeed, if you look at the recent poll that was done in Ashanti region, which was a very good barometer of what people who back Alan are behaving or doing, Alan dropped quite a bit in Ashanti region, and so was Bediako, or did Bediako. About 71% of that drop in the region went to Mahama, from Alan and Bediako to Mahama.
Yeah.
So that shows that there are people who are realigning for one reason or the other.
Now, I'm looking at some other elements of the findings. This is in the executive summary. The issue relating to violence.
Yes.
That a staggering 77% of voters, they have some level of concern about electoral violence. And it's just 23% that said that they are not concerned at all about violence in the upcoming elections. I mean, what could be fueling this fear? Is it what happened?
Is the rhetoric of the politicians.
Okay.
Is a rhetoric.
We have all the means.
Yes, people are talking, we will not do this, we will not do that, we will do this. And that creates kind of concern and anxiety within the voting population.
Wow.
So if you look at it, only 23% are not concerned.
But that's
effectively 77% have some.
That's a staggering figure.
Yeah, that's a staggering figure.
That's a staggering figure to have these people. And beyond the rhetoric, I'm sure a lot of people still have what happened in 2020 fresh on their minds, because there's not been a resolution to the matter. So they look at it, and even the internal elections, some of these things happening.
Absolutely.
And they look at all those things.
For concern for many people.
Absolutely. And then, you know the thing they say about standard of living. What role is it also playing in here, and what are people saying in relation to that?
There are some who use the current economic conditions, maybe jobs, education, so many things. So we've got the key issues for voters. But beside that, we ask them specific questions.
Okay.
And we give them 5 possible answers to choose from, thereby constraining them to the options we've given them. That which of the following has a greater influence on how you vote.
Okay.
But just pick 2 out of these 5. So we want you to prioritize the one that you think would really drive your decision or influence your decision.
Okay.
When we did that, past performance of the parties was mentioned by 54% of the people who first raised those as one of the things they will look at. So 54% of the items mentioned by all voters was past performance of the parties.
Past performance of the parties.
If the party is deemed to have performed, either currently or in the past, then that will influence them to vote for you or that party. And then the current economic condition was close behind.
Okay.
53%, just 1 point, virtually tied. 53% said the current economic conditions will play a greater influence on their decision.
But the top on the list for them is the past performance of the whichever party it is.
Yes.
Okay.
And then you have the credibility of the candidate. How credible is that candidate leading the party?
Yeah, and this is something that you'd see both parties trying to do,
Absolutely.
to attack each other's credibility, so that you chip away whatever it is that
or
you think
of doubt in people's mind.
Absolutely. Okay.
And then parties manifesto, 20%. It tells you clearly that it's just a fanfare when it comes to manifesto.
Wow.
Especially now.
Party manifesto, 20%.
Yes.
And past performance second, economic conditions. Past performance first, economic conditions second,
yes.
And then manifestos third with 20%.
Yes.
Okay.
Other reasons, 18%. Some may vote because it's my tribe, my religion, my this, my that, or I've gotten this and that. So those are very small percentages.
Those are small percentages. And the bit about past performances, you also see that between the candidates, where one person will say that when I was in office, this is what I was able to do. The other says, I have been able to do this in office. Meanwhile, my opponent has not done anything. I think Dr. Bawumia recently says he said that he introduced 33 policies and John Mahama introduced 0. So if there were to be a football match, he would have 33 goals and John Mahama would have 0 goals. Well, I mean, we expect these jobs from time to time between the two parties.
There's an interesting question. When we ask them to adjudge the performance of the government.
Okay.
Because if they are judged very well or very good, then that issue of past performance will really go to their credit. How did the voters rank the performance of the party?
Is it the performance of both
the government, the government, this current government?
Is it the one in relation to where the country is headed?
No, that's a different question.
Okay.
Overall, how do they perform?
What did they say?
MBB's performance.
What did they say?
Excellent, 6%.
Excellent what?
6%. They've done excellently or performed excellently, 6%. Very good or good is 28%. Very poor or poor and very poor, 53%.
Remind me of the sample size again.
1,112.
Across the 16 regions.
Yes.
Okay.
Randomly calling the numbers. So you can't even tell who you are calling. And where you're calling the person from.
So over 50% think that it's been poor.
Yes. And 13% said they perform averagely.
Now, I think on the back of that, we can talk about the direction the country is headed.
Yes.
What did they say in relation to that?
When we asked voters about their thought about where the country is headed, 20% said right direction.
20%?
20%. 73% said wrong direction.
That is as high as the people that fear or have concerns about electoral violence. So 73% think that we are headed in the wrong direction.
Yes. And 7% didn't have an opinion.
Then again, I mean, I'm trying to, marry that with the rhetoric of the administration, the current administration, for instance, that talks about how they have steered the affairs of the country well, and had it not been COVID and all that. But then again, this is the verdict.
The verdict of the people is quite clear. And this is consistent with the Afrobarometer assessment, which was around even 80%.
Now, I'm tying the figures we are getting from a few of the ones we have gone through right now, and marrying that with, for instance, the assertion that Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, the momentum is in his favor. That is what has been said, that the momentum is in his favor.
How do you measure somebody's momentum?
To the point where it is making the NDC angry. That is what his camp said.
leave the rhetoric and go to data.
Okay. The job day ground.
I mean, the polling numbers.
Yes.
I think in June, he went up a bit compared to the previous month.
Okay.
That was because he had ended his nationwide tour. And you cannot go on nationwide tour without seeing a bump in your polling numbers.
Okay.
That cannot be said to be momentum. Momentum is consistently outperforming, and outperforming. Now, two key decisions have been made by his campaign. The selection of the running mate was key.
Yeah.
They launched the manifesto. In fact, I'll say three. And then the press engagement. And we know how people perceive manifestos. It ranks low on what really influenced them. So it will not make a huge impact, the kind of manifestos these parties have released in this particular election. I'm not saying all the time, but every election cycle is not the same. There are issues that will be prominent this election cycle and may not be in the subsequent ones.
Yeah.
If you look at what happened in 2016, it was education, and that was it. Now it's no longer education. So every election cycle has their own issues, and this is not an election cycle that the manifesto alone is going to make a difference, as you've seen in the numbers.
So what will it take to tilt it?
It's the economy. It is the economy. It has been so for many, many months. For over 24 months, voters have said consistently that it is the economy.
So it's essentially their conditions of living.
Absolutely. The standard of living today, the cost of living today, and the perception of the general economy of the country.
Okay.
That is what will decide this election.
And so if anything drastic should come between now and December 7, it could tilt it.
Not necessarily, no, because if you look at the responses, 92% of people who we spoke to said they have already made up their mind. So, as they say in a local language, that is the point we are right now. It will take a seismic shift or catastrophic event on the part of any of the candidates to see a dramatic change in the race. The race has been stable. In fact, yesterday we took a look at the data that we've been compiling for the past 32 months. In April 2023, Mahama was on 53%.
This is April
2022.
2023 or 2022?
2022.
Okay.
And today he is at the same level, 53% per the public the telephone poll.
So it ties in with the 92% saying that their minds are already made up.
And I'm just trying to point to you that the race has not changed for 2 years.
For 2 years. Now, there's this part of the poll that I find interesting. That it says here, the poll also shows that of all voters who are undecided, 70% are floating voters, 11% are NPP voters, and 21% did not disclose their party affiliations, and 1% are NDC voters. For those who say they will not vote, 49% are floating voters, and 21% are NPP voters. 1% and 28% did not disclose their party affiliations. Can you explain this a bit more for me?
We have said that there will be voter apathy. Remember, 6.3 said they will not vote. Of this 6.3, 49% of them.
To 49% from that 6.3.
Yes,
okay,
are floating voters.
Okay.
And then 21% are MPP supporters or MPP voters. Only 1% are NDC of those who say they will not vote. And 28% are those who did not disclose their party affiliation to us. Now, this group of voters are traditionally MPP voters, mostly.
Who are disappointed and perhaps
and they don't want to tell you.
And they will not they will not vote for the NDC.
No. This is party affiliation.
This is party affiliation. Okay.
They won't tell you that they belong to MPP.
Okay.
They say, "Oh, me, I won't tell you."
Okay. Okay.
Some of them are NDC as well.
Okay.
But most of them are MPP. So if you say even half of them are MPP, and the other half other people, if you add 14% to 21%, that's about 35% of the I will not vote, maybe MPP people.
And the appointment of Napo hasn't had an influence on that, because one of the key reasons or the arguments of the team for choosing him was to propel the numbers for the party.
I think in certain areas, Napo has helped to
shore up
the base.
The base, okay.
The base. But in the same vein, he has succeeded in driving the floating voters away from MPP. And the floating voters are bigger than the additional numbers he's bringing on board. So the net effect is negative. But let's take Ashanti region, for example.
Okay.
Between July and August, or I think August and September, the people who said they are MPP and they are voting for Bawumia has increased by just 2%. But those who left Bawumia to join Mahama from the floating voters were about 16-17%.
That is interesting.
So you have to look at the dynamics of how much is he adding and how much
is he chipping off. Okay. And we'll be wrapping up shortly. The NDC has been very vocal about, for instance, the voters register. Do you think it will play any role in this at all?
There's something we call in accounting or auditing materiality. A single item may not be material on its own.
Okay.
But if repeated across a broader population, then it could be material. 5,000 or 300 vote or 400 vote in a constituency may not be material in many cases.
But then again, if there's 300 in every...
Absolutely. Then it becomes material. Yes. Because what is the winning margin for most of the elections in the past?
Yeah.
If in 2020, Nado won by 520,000 votes, and these errors, transfers, whatever, collectively could make up 300,000 votes, that is more than half of the margin Nado used to win the election. Then that becomes material. Okay. And therefore, we need some assurances that that is not the case.
And recently, there's been some skirmishes in Wali. Did you do anything there?
No, we haven't done anything in Wali, but we've been keeping an eye on Wali, and we have always said that Wali may be retained by MPP in the parliamentary elections, even the presidential, because we use a model we call MRP. We look at, even if you haven't been to constituency, we look at what is happening in that region and adjacent constituencies and the national poll to see what is going to happen there. We had believed that Wali was going to be retained by MPP after the primaries. But looking at what has happened now, we have now classified Wali as toss-up.
Yeah.
Yes.
With everything that happened and all the skirmishes.
They could be in danger of losing that seat. Because, look, the followers of the aggrieved persons will react.
Even with her withdrawing?
No, you see, you can withdraw at the top. The issue is how to reconcile the people at the bottom.
At the base.
That is the problem. And remember, these are not delegates. The next election is about all voters.
Yeah.
And normally, voters don't like this unity among parties when they are voting.
So, because of how things panned out, she could chip away some of the votes of whichever candidate is settled on.
She won by less than 3% or so in the last election.
Wow.
An election where the party is on the back foot. That's not good enough.
And speaking about people chipping away votes, we know that in some areas, for instance, for the NPP, people are going to run as independent candidates. Agona West in the central region, Cynthia Morrison, former gender minister, she has decided to run as an independent. in the Suhum area, Kwejo Asante is running as an independent. I mean, does it look like they will have an impact on how things pan out?
This is the last thing MPP needs at this point in time. There is already a natural swing against them across the country. In Greater Accra, the average swing is about 31%. In the Western, around 30%. I think Eastern is not huge, it's about 7%. Ashanti is about maybe 5%. And Central, about 25%. So if you look at how Cynthia Morrison won her race and where the race is now, I mean, if she goes independent, I can bet my last penny that MPP will lose the seat. So the recent poll there shows that it could be messy. And if the incumbent pulls the numbers up a bit, I think they could give the seat to NDC if care is not taken. Because it's going to be like the UK elections, where Reforms UK chipped away vote from the Conservatives and allowed Labour to just overtake them. So a mathematics of numbers.
So at this point in time, they'd have to do everything possible to
prevent those people going independent.
They perhaps will have to do some more talking to. Now, there's a part of the poll that says that if elections were held today, 12% of NPP voters will vote for JDM if the elections were held today. And while 81% will vote for Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, 1% will vote for Alan Kwejo Chemating, 1% for Nana Kwame Bediako, and then 4% are still undecided. For NDC voters, 1% will vote for Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, and 97% will vote for JDM, 1% for NKB Nana Bediako, and 1% are undecided. However, among the floating voters, JDM leads with some 55%, and Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia is 12%. Alan Kwejo Chemating is 1%. Bediako is 4%, and there are 27%. There's a 27% of people who are undecided
among floating voters.
I mean, let me just finish. It says, among those who did not disclose their party affiliations, JDM 27%, DMB 19%, NKB 5%, others 3%, and all that. These are also very interesting numbers. That the party supporters, we are getting 87 for Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, and then 97, close to 100% for John Mahama in his party.
You see,
their parties,
to understand what is going on between the parties and floating voters. Remember, we said that no MPP or NDC can win election on their own.
Yes, you need to get the floating
voters and others to join you.
Yeah.
And we have said that MPP is not united. It's no doubt. Because 81% of them are voting for Bawumia. 81% MPP people. Whereas in the NDC, it's 97%. That is a huge gap. Then you have 12% of self-identified, self-confessed MPP voters saying that they won't vote for their own, but they will vote for John Mahama. And only 1% of NDC people are saying that no, they won't vote for their own, they will vote for John Mahmoud Bawumia. It is a huge advantage John Mahama has over Bawumia. And then when it comes to the floating voters, that is even worse because 55% for Mahama compared to 12% for
Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia.
That is a gap of 43 points gap. And this has been consistent in Greater Accra and in the Western region among floating voters. So he has a lot of work to do among the floating voters. And I've said that his problem, in fact, comes from three angles. From within his own, not united, and then from NDC who are united behind their own, and among floating voters who are kind of completely not on his side.
Wow. All right, Mr. Dankwah, I wish we could go on and on and on and on with this conversation. Unfortunately, I'd have to end it here so that we have our science and tech segment as well. But Is there anything else you'd want to add to this? This is a very fascinating numbers, and when we are heading into the elections, all these things come around to add to the color. So for those of you who say you're not feeling the atmosphere, I think that you should read a copy of the poll, so it will give you an idea, and it even informs your conversations you have and your arguments, whichever side you belong to. You can argue it in, you can argue it out. Those it favors, they will tell you that we will not be complacent. Those it doesn't favor, say that it's just a poll. The real poll is December 7th. So it is what it is as usual. What would be your final words?
Fortunately, we are repeating the same polls in 2 weeks' time. This time in the field.
In the field, okay. This will be in person.
In person.
Okay.
So we'll have a chance to compare the in-person results to this.
Okay.
And then again in November, we will do telephone poll again to confirm what we heard in person in October, in November.
So in November, will that be your last poll before the December 7 election?
Yes.
Okay.
And based on that poll, we will give out our projections.
Your projections.
Which will be combining the polls and some statistical modeling.
Okay.
To see how we would allocate those who say they will know they are undecided. But you need to find a way of saying, okay, if they do decide, where will they go? That is what we have to do using modeling.
The undecided, is that significant to determine whether
in this current poll, it is not.
Okay.
Because even if you give all of them to Bawumia, he doesn't get to.
He doesn't get to match up to John Mahama.
No, Mahama. Mahama still wins.
Okay.
And in the ordinary poll that we have done, even if you give him all the undecided, it still doesn't matter. So it is a very tough election for him to be in. And it's really made more difficult because of the people that he's running against, some of whom come from his own backyard.
Okay.
Alan Chiramatin and Nakwam Bediako are drawing their vote from MPP.
From the MPP.
And that is the problem that
that faces him. Okay. All right. Mr. Dankwah, thank you so much for your time and for gracing our studios. It's always a pleasure having you around. It's always very exciting when we are talking about these numbers. Sometimes I wonder, how are you able to do all these things? One day when I grow up, I'll be a pollster.
Welcome to the game.
Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
You're still listening to the Morning Star here on Star 103.5 FM. We will be delving into our conversation